Are we finding out, given what we're seeing on the ground and in places like Kharkiv, that it came too late?
I don't think it came too late, but clearly we're having to recover from a delay in the funding. I've supported the measure for almost a year, 9 months, and it would definitely create a disruption. We saw Russia take territory. Kharkiv is under threat. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of conscripts that Russia has brought up. It's a serious threat, but the Ukrainian people are strong. We've got the resources approved. They've got to get on the battlefield, and we've got to do everything we can to defeat Putin.
With what we're learning today in a remarkable story in the New York Times, Senator, about the challenges facing Ukraine in the battlefield, highlighting the wait, the months-long wait to get the munitions that they needed. There were references to technological leaps that Russia has been enjoying in diverting weaponry from Ukraine as President Zelensky asks us for a Patriot missile defense battery for Kharkiv. Are we sending the right material to Ukraine for this time?
Well, I think we need to send a lot more. What we have to do is make sure proper training's in place. They have the HIMARS platforms, the ATACMS platforms. They need more just basic artillery rounds that we're having to conserve, not necessarily respond to any sort of offensive action on Russia's part in the way that they would like to. Most of that's working its way through. I should also mention that some other states, while Congress was taking its time to pass the aid here, were also providing funding. Having said that, Russia is learning on the battlefield. They are deploying advanced weapons. They are getting help from China, North Korea, and other countries. We need to hold them accountable. I should say Iran. But I believe that the Iranian people are strong. They can win. But there are a number of other platforms we should get into Ukraine in the future.
As we look at what's happening in Eastern Europe, we did also get some disturbing news earlier today, Senator. The Slovak Prime Minister, Robert Fico, suffering life-threatening injuries after being shot in public. Obviously, an assassination attempt that has been widely condemned across the world. But this is also an individual who has been more Russia-friendly. And I wonder, sir, your reaction to the news we got today.
Well, it's very disappointing. And I can't, so we hope that the Prime Minister recovers. But we also have to take a look at members of NATO who are, I think, not as firm as they should be. And I'm thinking more about Hungary, less about Slovakia, who are not necessarily as tight and with the rest of the NATO alliance as they should be. Russia is a massive threat to Western Europe. They're a massive threat to the Balkans. I just met with the president of Montenegro today. The amount of misinformation and hybrid warfare that Russia is guilty of throughout Europe is astounding. And we have to do everything we can to buttress support for Ukraine, to make sure the NATO alliance members are all speaking with the same voice, and then also protecting those next countries that Putin will go to if he succeeds in Ukraine. He'll go through Moldova, and other countries are hanging in the balance.
Well, one of the other matters you're going to be dealing with on your Senate Banking Committee, sir, is what to do with the FDIC. Chair Martin Gruenberg testified before the House Financial Services Committee today, cited his personal failures as chairman, even apologized. Listen for a moment to what he said, and we'll have you respond.
I also acknowledge my own failures as chairman, both in failing to recognize how my temperament in meetings impacted others, and for not having identified the deeper cultural issues at the FDIC sooner. I am personally committed to addressing these issues.
Senator, were you convinced by what you heard today? Do you accept his apology? What should happen at the FDIC?
Look, if Gruenberg is personally committed to accepting these issues, why in 2008, when he took actions against an employee that were so grievous that an external investigation was ordered, and he admitted during a confirmation hearing, this is a significant event, an external review of his actions as a manager. And he admitted 14 years later, only when he was preparing for a confirmation hearing, that he actually read a report that was prepared 13 or 14 years ago. I don't accept his apologies. He is a failure as management. For 17 out of the 20 years that he's been at the FDIC, he's either been chair in an acting capacity or confirmed capacity or vice chair. He has destroyed bipartisanship at the FDIC. They do not promulgate rules and come up with policy on a bipartisan basis. He is guilty and documented as being responsible for a toxic work environment. And this guy wants us to say, well, the last 20 years weren't so good, but the next few will be better. And shame on members of the Democratic Party that are so focused on his hyper-partisan strategies that they would look past something that would get anybody terminated in the Fortune 500.
Well, sir, I think what you're alluding to there is the idea that he kind of is required to get the regulatory reform this administration has been pushing in terms of Basel III capital reform across the finish line. If he resigns, you see no way that actually happens, do you?
Well, I think Basel III Endgame in its current form, as proposed by Barr, is dead on arrival. I think it's been made very clear that what he thought he could do was get another partisan vote among the Fed Board of Governors. Is just simply not going to happen. So he's got to decide whether or not he does anything in this Congress. And I will tell you, his current proposal is doomed to fail.